Now let's get to another method which we will use to add pelican crossings. And these pelican crossings are actually one of the most important part of every street that you make. But before adding that, select all the empties that you used to add decals. Press M, move them into a new collection and call them decals. Now to add pelican crossings, we need a simple plane. So Shift A, add a plane. Move it over here. I adjust the scaling a bit. But when you do, don't forget to press Ctrl A and apply the scale. Get into the shader editor, make a new material for it, and rename it to Pelican Crossing. I'm going to use this texture. If you want to use it, you can find the link in the description. Now simply add the maps and make the connections. Here we have the opacity map, so plug it into the alpha, which makes the Pelican Crossing a PNG texture. Then on the mapping node, you can adjust the scale of it. Like everything else, it is also procedural. Now let's move it to the corner over here, move it to the side. So now let's move it to the side over here. Here seems to be nice. Head over to the modifiers panel and give it the array modifier. We need it to be arrayed on the x-axis, which is as a default. Now all we need to do is to increase the count until we cover the entire street. Nice, just nice. Now move it down until it feels right. So here it seems proper. Now let's add some colors. Of course, if you don't like the white color. So to do that, add a color ramp and drop it after the base color. Give the white slider your desired color. Now if we take a look closely, you can see the edges have turned out to be pretty dark and black. To give it a better look, slightly increase the color value of the black slider. Then for the icing on the cake, switch the color ramp into constant. This will give a concrete and solid look. This looks insane, just insane. Just see how real it looks. It is insane, and I really like it. So now press Alt D, make an instance and move it to the other side of the crossroad. And do it until you cover every crossroad. So now I call it a real city road network, but we are not done yet. The final step is to add road lines. I mean the real main road lines. For that, we need another plane. Go into edit mode and make it as big as the street itself. Then make a new material for it, rename it to road line. For the texture, if you want to use mine, the link will be in the description. On the mapping node, you can adjust the scale of it. You can of course adjust the color as you already know how to do it. Then duplicate it and spread them all over your network. So this is how it looks so far, and it looks so good. We will continue later. So the next step will be dedicated to add almost the most important factor of any city. You guessed it right, the buildings. Well, speaking about buildings, you can simply go online and find a huge amount of free assets. But if you ask me, and you already know how I work, I like to keep everything procedural and under control as much as possible. Because, well, let me show you. Take a look at this square. Obviously, from the look of it, a big tall building must be pitched here. It could be a commercial or a residential or anything else, but obviously it should be big. Free and ready-made assets cannot be exactly what you need. So in this tutorial, we are going to learn how to make procedural buildings, which is so insane. You can decide how many levels it should have, how big or small it is supposed to be, and how wide you like it to be. And for that, we are going to use geometry nodes. And don't worry, we are not going to make a complex geometry node setup for it, because someone has already done it and actually turned it into a free add-on, which is the Buildify add-on. This one is so great. It is a very powerful procedural city type building generator. Of course, I'm not sure if it's an add-on or not. It is a blend file that if we open, there you have a pre-generated building. So let me switch into rendered view to have a better look. So select the building, press tab to go into edit mode. Make sure the edge selection tool is selected. And here you can see the different edges. We can select an edge, press G to move it, and it works in real time, which is so insane. Just consider the possibilities that you can have. We can of course head over to the modifiers panel where there is another handy feature. Here you can increase or decrease the number of floors. Let me move aside the buildings. Here we have the assets, I mean the building parts. These parts come together using this complex geometry node setup. Again, great thanks to the creator of this setup, because they have done a great job. Just take a look at the node setup. They went through all this hardship and yet they made it for free. I deeply appreciate them. So what we are going to do today is something like this. These assets may not be that much realistic. So instead of them, we will make our own assets to get a more realistic result. And after that, you will know how to make different versions of any type of city type buildings. Let's begin. In the Outliner tab, there is a collection called modules. If we open it, we have the different parts of our building, like ground floor walls, which includes 3 different assets. If we delete this one, it will be removed from the building. And if we delete all of them, well, there will be nothing left. So that's how it works. So let's start. Shift S, cursor to world origin, then Shift A in the mesh add a plane. Let's move it aside like so, RX90. Go into edit mode, move it up exactly on the grid so that the origin point will be on the bottom edge. This is so important to do. Control A, apply rotation. Then the scaling should match. So press N. In the item tab, here we have the dimensions. If we set the dimension X and Z on 3, it will be the exact size of the main modules. But right now I like to make them a little bigger. It will be easier to work with them. Later I will adjust it. Or let me go back, I want to show you something. Now if we drop it in the ground floor walls collection, there you have it. But the scaling is not matching here because we should press Ctrl A to apply the scale. Now it works properly. So cool, it works in real time. Now let's give it a nice look. We start with adding stairs. So go to Edit, Preferences, in the Get Extensions tab, search for Archimesh. Here in this tab, you should be connected to the internet, and there will be an install button here if you haven't yet installed it. And it will barely take 3 seconds. So now we can press Shift A in the mesh. Down here we have the Archimesh add-on, under which we can add a stair. Let's set the number of steps on 9, which is totally fine, and also enable close sides. Then adjust it in place and play around with the scale of it. So something like that looks nice. Now with it selected, press the forward slash key to isolate it and then go into edit mode. Select this bottom edge, press Shift D to make a duplicate, and then press P to separate them by selection. Select them in the object mode and then go into edit mode. Select this vertex, press E and extrude it upward like so. Then again extrude it once more, something like that. Then extrude this bottom vertex upward, extrude it once more, select these 2 vertices, press F to connect them together. Select this vertex, press Ctrl B to bevel. But you cannot bevel a single vertex until you press V. Then scroll forward to increase the segments and make a nice curve, like so. Do the same thing with this vertex. So I like it now. Then select everything, press F to fill. Again, make sure everything is selected, press E and extrude them like so. Something like that looks nice. Now get down here, select this vertex, move it aside like so, and shift select this one. Press J to add an edge between them. Then select this face, press E, and extrude it like so. Now let's add a nice molding. So select these top edges and shift select this one. Press J to add an edge between them. Then select this and in the item tab, set their mean bevel weight on 1. Then in the modifiers panel, give it the bevel modifier and make sure to put it above the mirror modifier. Switch the limit method to weight. Then switch the profile to custom. Increase the segments to somewhere around 20 and switch the preset to cornice molding. Ctrl A to apply the scale, and we already got a pretty good result. But if we decrease the amount of it, there you can see this nice effect, which is so cool. For every edge that you set the mean bevel weight on 1, you will get this effect. So let's exit the isolation mode. So from the Archimesh add-on at the door. It has 2 cubes attached to it in order to work as booleans. I will tell you how to work with them. Select the empty controller and place the door on top of the stair. Then scale it up or down on different axes to set it nicely in place. Let's switch into random colors. Now let's run a Boolean operation. So edit preferences in the get extensions. This time search for Bool tool add-on. So make sure to install it. And we are ready to go. First select the cube. Then shift select the wall to make it the active object. Now in order to run a Boolean operation, press Shift Ctrl B and from the brush Boolean choose difference. So if I hide the door, we can see it better. So we basically made a hole in the wall. Now with the wall selected, in the modifiers panel, we can see the Boolean modifiers. So apply the Boolean modifier because it is working properly. And we can delete this cube because it is not needed anymore. And also this one, which is not needed. Select the wall and go into edit mode. And then select these new edges that we added. Press E and extrude them backward like so. That's fine. Now select the controller and move it back to get this nice effect. Done. The next one in the row is the window. So add it from our dear friend, the Archimesh. Add the rail window. Move it over here, and I actually like to rotate it by 90 degrees to have it from this angle. Then play around with the scale of it. Select the Boolean cube, shift select the wall, shift Ctrl B, brush Boolean difference. Apply the modifier and select these new edges and extrude them backward like so. Select the Boolean cube, then move back the window. Now it looks really cool. Yeah, I do like the way it looks. For the window frame, we can select these 3 edges, or these 4 edges actually. Shift D to make a duplicate, P separate by selection. Yeah, I do like the way it looks. And to have an easier life, let's dissolve these vertices. Select everything else, press E, then S, scale them outward, like so. Then we can adjust these as well. Select everything else, press E, then S, scale them outward, like so. Finally, select them all, extrude them forward to add some thickness. Something like that. Then duplicate and separate this top face. Extrude it and then scale it up a little bit because this is going to be a nice molding. Something like that. So make sure to apply rotation and scale. Right click, set origin to geometry. Then select these 3 edges, set the mean bevel weight on 1, give it the bevel modifier, 10 segments are enough, limit method on weight, profile on custom, and preset cornice molding. Yeah, that looks insanely good. And I actually like to increase the amount of it and then move down this top face. Something like that. Yeah, I do like it. Then on the frame itself, select these edges, min bevel weight on 1, and then shift select the molding, Ctrl L, copy modifiers. And if you are getting this weird issue, that's because of the face orientation. So disable the bevel and these red faces, you should select them all. Press Alt N and choose flip. Now if we enable it, there you have it. It seems like we are still having some issue. Alt N, flip. Yeah, now it is working properly. And yeah, looks fine. But we should definitely decrease the amount of it. Now it looks really decent. We can of course duplicate the top molding and move it down over here. And play around with the scale of it. Yeah, I really like the way it looks. Now duplicate the frame and use it for the door. And finally, to add a little bit of more detail, add a cube over here and give it some scaling adjustment. Shift select the wall, Shift Ctrl B, difference. Apply the modifier and then delete the cube. Select the new edges, extrude them backward like so, then press F to fill. You can of course press Ctrl R to add an edge loop over here, then select these new faces by holding down Alt. Press Alt E, extrude faces along normals and extrude them inward. And if you're getting this weird issue over here, enable offset even. Then Alt S to scale it up or down, and again offset even. Now somewhere around here, add a circle. Scale it way down. Fill the face and then extrude it up. Then add a UV sphere. Scale it way down and move it on top and place it over here like so. And then extrude it up. Select both of them, press Ctrl J to join them together. Now give it the array modifier. Increase the count and factor X until you get a reasonable look. Yeah, something like that looks definitely fine. And to finish it up, add a cube, scale it way down. And done. Now we can get to the texturing. Texturing these parts are not as complicated as the streets. Just a simple texturing, I promise. So the first one to get a texture will be the wall. We will add a brick texture, and here is a very important point. Try not to use high quality versions. I mean 2K is plenty and 1K is totally fine because we will barely pay attention to the buildings and the entire attention will be focused on the hero car. Let me show you a very dirty cheat. So this is the final render and this shot. You see, take a look at this building. It is a very tall building. And in the next shot, well, that is so different. It is so small because that tall building would make the street really dark. And I wanted to be pretty bright. So I decreased the scale of it, and by saying that, I mean I deleted a lot of the floors. And it actually turned better because the combination of a street, buildings, a sky, and the NFS Most Wanted car turned out to be pretty fantastic. And the point is, nobody ever noticed that. So hear this from me. A good 3D artist is a good cheater. So let's get back to work. This brick texture looks pretty fine. So let's switch into rendered view, make sure the wall is selected, make a new material, and to stay organized, rename it to brick. We need the base color, roughness, and the normal map. As we have talked about it before, The base color map should have a color space of sRGB, and for the rest of the maps, it will be non-color. So without any UV unwrapping or even adding the texture coordinates and the mapping node, it looks pretty fine. But just in case, select one of the maps, Ctrl T, and then make the connections. And by using the scale property, you can decrease or increase the size of the bricks. I like them to be a bit smaller. Yeah, something like that. And if you want to make some changes to the color, after the base color map, you can add a hue saturation, then play around with the values to get different looks. Now let's get to the frames and moldings. So make a new material for it. What should we call it? Frames is fine. This is a concrete material. So again, base color, roughness, and normal. And as you can see, in this case, we need to UV unwrap this object. So here I want to teach you a very cool trick by the help of which you don't need to UV unwrap the object. So select the maps, hold down the Alt key and switch the method from flat to box. And then a blend of 0.3 is fine. Now select the base color map, press Ctrl T to bring up these two. And instead of UV, choose object. And all of a sudden you can see that your object doesn't need any UV unwrap anymore. It is working totally fine. And let's increase the scale, decrease the size of it. So something like that may look nice, but first let's apply this texture to the other parts. So select all the frames and all the moldings and also these parts around the stair. Then finally shift select this one, Ctrl L, link materials. And let me see, here we have some repeating issue, but it is totally fine because this is building. Yeah, this looks insanely good. Let's get to the stairs. This is a floor tiles texture. Because this is from the Archimesh, it already has some material, but it is not fine at all, so we delete them. And let's rename it to stair. So diffuse, normal, and roughness. Diffuse is the same as the base color. So do the exact same thing as before. But something I got, yeah, I forgot to make these connections. So I should definitely decrease the strength. 0.1 is totally fine. Yeah, now it looks better. So let's get to the stairs and adjust them. So seems like we can go without UV unwrapping. Yeah, I do like it. It looks so cool. The final ones are the door, window, and this ornamental part over here. And something over here. You can see that the texture over here is totally distorted. So why not using the same box option? In the blink of an eye, it is totally fine. So let's set it on 0.5 or 0.8. It is so small. 0.6 maybe, yeah, that's fine. Now select the door. Let's rename it to door. Then remove them. You're not going to believe this one. This is a rubber texture, but maybe it will work fine. Base color, normal map, and roughness. Yeah, it looks so good. Much better than I thought. Now select all the rest of the untextured objects, which means the frames and this ornamental part. And finally the door. Ctrl L, link material. Yeah, that's so cool. Now in order to add these new parts to the buildings, we should turn them all into one singular object. Otherwise, we will get a pretty weird result. First of all, we should apply all the modifiers. So to save some time, select all the parts, press Ctrl A, choose Visual Geometry to Mesh. Then make sure this wall is the active object, because the origin point is pretty important here. It should be set at the bottom. Now press Ctrl J to join them all into one singular object. And we can delete these controllers because they are not needed anymore. Now let's add them to the building, but before that we should adjust the size of it. 3, and this one we should make it a smaller, something like that. So let's give it a shot. Oh, it already works. So we just need to press Ctrl A to apply the rotation and scale. Yeah, it looks so good. You should make different versions, but here you can see it works pretty fine. Next up, let's make the window part. This one is so quick. So add a plane, RX90. Again, let's move it up. We should make a hole, and yeah, you guessed it, Booleans. So duplicate this plane, press S to scale it up. Let's move it like so, and give it some scaling adjustment. Then in the edit mode, select these two vertices, right click to subdivide. Select the new vertex, move it up, Ctrl B, V, scroll forward to add some segments and give it a nice look like this. Then extrude the entire thing, shift select the wall, shift Ctrl B, difference. It is working properly, so we can apply the modifier and delete this one. Then select everything, Alt E, extrude edges, and extrude them backward like so. Then for the window, we use the rail window from the Archimesh. So again, I like to rotate it by 90 degrees, place it over here, and then adjust the scale of it. Then duplicate the entire thing and move them up to fill the gap. Then move the windows backward. Yeah, this is totally fine and acceptable. Yeah, I do like it. For the wall, we will use this brick texture. Seems like the rotation is not adjusted, so Ctrl A, apply rotation and scale. And for the window frame, we will use the door material, which was a rubber. Select all the others, and then Ctrl L, link material. This is totally fine. Let's apply the modifiers. So select everything, Ctrl A, Visual Geometry to Mesh. Then make sure the wall is the active object, Ctrl J. Then if we drop it to the module's middle floor walls, there you have them. Looks just fine. And this is the look of the city so far. The next step will be dedicated to add city props to add much more realism to our city.